Ahoy! Today the New World team finally spoke about target lock, we get some new information on a trick on fresh start, and we get some general info for the PvP zone, which includes some things that were not obvious beforehand. Let's begin with the PvP target lock. So Lydia posted this new article about the Cursed Mists, and in that thread she was kind of giving us the option to ask some questions about the PvP zone. The questions that people have been asking, by the way, are very good and basically cover most of the stuff that I would want to know about, so you can look at the thread for yourself, but if you have one of the more critical questions, it's probably already in there. But in that post, she also addressed target lock. With relation to PvP target lock, the development team has taken player feedback and some adjustments will be detailed in the release notes coming out next week. The focus on this thread, however, should be on the mechanics of the free-for-all PvP zone. So, the first thing that they're trying to achieve here is very clearly not to have that thread spammed with questions about target lock, because every video they post gets spammed with questions about target lock, and rightfully so. So more than anything, I expect this to be a prevention measure. The fact that she's writing some adjustments makes me expect that target lock in PvP will continue to exist, but maybe will be softened up a little bit. If they were planning to outright remove it, I expect they would say as much. That said, depending on what kind of version of target lock they go for, it could also be significantly less of a problem. Imagine, for example, a target lock where you can't just 180 when the target's dodging through you, and where you don't snap lock onto new targets, but you slowly transition over, and generally the target lock is slower to follow the target, so you miss more shots at mid-range as well. At that point, you might actually end up with a target lock that has more downsides than upsides for PC players, while still being useful for console. So maybe that's a possibility that they're talking about when they're saying adjustments. That's about the most that I would hope for here. Realistically, I expect some relatively minor nerfs. The next point actually relates to a trading tip or a preparation tip that I also posted on my Patreon, which will no longer be possible. I said from the start that this was a very questionable one and I wasn't sure if it's going to work out. Now we have confirmation that it won't. But on that note, I still have plenty of other prep and trading tips for the expansion on my Patreon. I'm going to post a new one today. So if you're interested in those, and most of them will still be working, then consider supporting me there. The one in particular that won't be working is claiming unclaimed rewards from the previous season pass, which is something that was possible in the past and is possible on other servers. If you look at the season pass FAQ, then it says, yes, after a season ends, you'll still be able to claim any rewards that you'd earned from the season, but not yet claimed. The idea here was to leave the rewards unclaimed, which is especially easy with the premium pass, and then claim them on the new standard servers and get more than 10,000 gold from that. But as of today, Lydia has confirmed that that won't be possible. If you enjoyed the video so far, consider subscribing and clicking the bell. Also, Spell asked if we would be able to get a new server list so that people could plan what servers to go onto together, and Lydia responded, it may not be possible to get a full list before launch, as the team plans to add additional worlds as needed, so it's tough to say exactly how many there will be. I'm unsure if this means that they're not planning to release a server list, at least with the servers that they're planning from the start at all, or if that just means we'll get a server list but it may be incomplete if they add more afterwards. And last but not least, we have the Cursed Mists PvP Zone deep dive, which again gives us some information that wasn't available previously. So they are saying, trying to collude with other players isn't a bad strategy, but it's horrifyingly easy to accidentally, or quote-unquote accidentally, catch friends in AoEs when the fighting gets hectic. Now, here I already gotta ask, the collusion here was something that initially they said, please no collusion, and now they're saying that's not a bad strategy, so which one is it? So is this free for all? Do they want us to collude? I don't know, it's already weird to me. What is more relevant is what they're saying down here. We want to discourage massive murder balls of allied players. There's always going to be collusion, but we don't want to make it easy. I already get a question that, like, yeah, there's always going to be collusion, but based on what we have seen on the beta servers, the collusion is going to be incredibly easy, and you could make significantly larger efforts to reduce collusion in various ways, and other games have done so successfully. Random spawn location, kind of making every player incognito so you can't recognize them from gear or name or whatever. Various effects that come into play when players stick together for too long, and so on and so on. So there's a lot that can be done about collusion. So what has Amazon Games in this case actually done? They've implemented a new free-for-all system that eliminates all group, company, and faction ties. Even if you're fighting alongside friends, it's very easy to accidentally harm or kill one another. While, what this doesn't really mention, still displaying various components of that. It still shows you the names. It's still, when an enemy in the zone is of the same faction or same company, it still labels them differently, so it's somewhat more recognizable. So there is quite a fair bit here that still indicates who you may or may not want to hit. Additionally, they say we also implemented a new crowd control system that keeps players from lingering in large packs for too long. Now, this is something that I haven't seen yet. There are some theories about this being the cannonball from the Ghost ship. I'm not sure if that's going to be what it is, because I don't really see how that would prevent anything like this. I was thinking maybe some kind of ticking dot if you stick too close to other players without fighting, maybe something along those lines. I wish they would have specified that more here. I think that is something that's very interesting, because this could actually be a decent feature, but based on what they're saying here, we don't know, because on the flip side, this could also be they're taking the teleport system from territory control and just slapping that into the zone. If people stay too close together for too long, then they say, okay, only 20 people are allowed in this area or something, and they could still claim that's a new crowd control system because it's slightly different in terms of not locking specific areas, but rather being somewhat more flexible. So yeah, I would like to know more about this so we can actually accurately judge what this is going to be. And then lastly, loot chests function like normal resources. Once looted, they're unavailable to all other players until the respawn, which, yeah, that's what you're going to be fighting over. There's also no randomization with the location of these chests, which I think is unfortunate. Gonna make it fairly easy to somewhat camp the areas where a lot of chests are, at least the fortresses where all of the chests are together. So I think there's definitely potential for a lot of issues, and the big question is how much of that will be solved through that. But them saying that there was always going to be collusion also makes me kind of think that they're, to some extent, just saying, yeah, that's just going to happen, that's just whatever. If there's a musket squad, then tough luck for you, pretty much. So we will find out. They say, we believe in the strength of our PvP combat. Again, interesting in the context of target lock, basically changing a lot of that. Not to mention the unique thrill of PvP, and always look for more ways to engage both PvP and PvE players with enticing rewards. This time we wanted to deliver more freeform, always available PvP experiences, rather than relying on instances, scheduled events, and matchmaking queues. That's kind of convenient framing, because if they hadn't included scheduled events here, then the last PvP content that they added, being influence races, would have been pretty much the same. Only that one factor here excludes it, that is what it shares with wars, but everything else in terms of PvP is instance and matchmaking, I guess. I think one big issue that they have is if they introduced more matchmaking queues for PvP, like if they added another mode, it would split the player base even more, and that's something they, at this point, probably can't afford. So even with cross servers in some regions, that could cause problems, and as such, they kind of have to do something else, but then, again, people just want new OPR map anyways. There's a bit of fluff here, and they say, our hope is the easy access and bountiful spoils tempt even the most staunchest PvE players to take a dip in the pool. It's full of treasure after all. And the Cursed Myths, it's one of the 3 ways to acquire 700 plus gear, potentially the best option for solo players. Which, I guess, in a way, it probably is, because you can't do the raid solo. So, yeah, other PvP content looks like it's going to give worse 700 plus gear and only once weekly. You're probably just going to go for coconuts, and that's really the main idea here. But that's not really making players significantly engage with this content. They're just going to run to that one chest a week and try to get out without having to fight anyone. And then they say there's also some fantastic named items and artifacts that reward the greater risk. But what they're kind of leaving out here is that there are various ways to get the rewards without ever touching the PvP zone at all. What I think is interesting here is them saying there were a few zones in the game we thought could benefit from updates, as well as serve as proving grounds for new types of gameplay: Cutlass Keys, Morningdale, Restless Shores, and arguably even Reekwater. So it sounds like they have plans to overhaul other zones in the future, if New World has that kind of future in the first place. Maybe rather than expanding, because that seems to be the the path they're usually taking at the moment, just rework something instead of expanding on the map. They also mention a new variety of lost pirates here that they've introduced. We can see them right here. These gold-cursed ones, gold-cursed lost, which look pretty cool. They mentioned that the zone has a population cap of some kind, a new population cap system, but they're never actually telling us what this cap is or how many players can be in the zone. So there's some restriction there as well, but without any details. This is a very important quote here. This free-for-all PvP zone is a bit of an experiment. So based on how players engage with the experience, we'll see how it evolves going forward. Right now, players can look forward to new rewards after release. Also an interesting statement, so we see more in the future apparently. And we'll also keep an eye on the cursed mist to tune whatever players, for what players are doing most. They had very, very similar words for influence races, saying, yeah, this is just an early version, we're testing things, we're adjusting based on the feedback, we'll see how things go. You can guess what happened. Barely any tweaks to that since the release. No significant additions, changes. The rewards are still terrible, and now even more so than before. So I would not expect this to be significantly changed in the future unless it completely blows up, but rather them saying this so they can be like, hey, it's not perfect. If you don't like it that much, it's just because it's in an early experimental stage or something. As usual, quite a few remaining question marks here, which we'll hopefully get more information about closer to the launch, at least when they release some form of patch notes for the expansion for New World Aeternum itself. I will of course keep you updated, so if you're interested in that, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you get notified. And if you'd like to support me further and get early trading tips for the expansion, then you can do so on my Patreon. Thanks to all of my patrons for do exactly that, and thank you for watching. Duke Sloth, out.